All right, so I'll have you start with the easiest question here. Full name and who you are.
My name is Clifford. I'm with the Immigration Task Force of Monterey and the Rapid Response Network.
And tell me a little about, so can you talk a little bit about the concern that drives the need for Rapid Response Network?
The concern that drives the need for the Rapid Response Network is really around protecting people's civil rights under the Constitution. Immigrants, people without papers, have the same rights under the Constitution because they reside on U.S. soil, unless there is, they require a lawyer. The only difference is that they need to pay for a lawyer. And I've already lost the train of thought. Can we start over?
In terms of detentions and ICE activity, I mean, has there been a lot more?
Yes.
Have you seen an uptick?
There's a big spike, and we feel it coincides with California declaring itself a sanctuary state, and I think they're trying to sort of make an example. We have an unconfirmed report that they have flown in extra ICE agents from around the country to be able to pursue these detentions, and now they've escalated in terms of doing I-9 audits. Those are audits of the workplace to find out whether or not people have status to work here. And the unfortunate part in them doing this is that the California economy and the people who put the food on America's tables are the people who are being targeted. And there's a misperception that these people are taking jobs from other people here who can't work. We have a 4% unemployment rate. It is a very solid employment rate, but people don't want to do these jobs. Americans do not come in flocking to do these jobs, and we have good people who are here from Mexico, from Central American and South American countries, who come in and do backbreaking, horrid work to be able to feed America. And I think that there should be some better treatment, and more importantly, the Dreamers are breaking my heart right now, what's happened to them with being a political football. But more than that, the temporary status protections being lifted with people who've been here 20 years, who no longer have a home where they were. What happened to the America that I knew, where everybody could come here and make a life and pursue an American dream? To my mind, I think the people who live here and have lived here for a long time should all be given a path to citizenship. And I know in these times that sounds a little bit radical, but when I was a kid, the thing I grew up with was give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. And to me, that is what America is about. And what I'm trying to do and what our group is trying to do is to get us back there. And in the meantime, to be able to help people from having their lives disrupted. You know, you wake up or you go to school and you don't know if your dad's going to be there at the end of the day to pick you up. You don't know if your mom is going to be there. The kind of terror I've seen in children's eyes is not right, and we are better than that.
And I would imagine that participating in this are a lot of allies who are citizens and are able to take that risk and document. I mean, talk about the importance of coming forward to stand up for a community. You know, there might be this attitude that I'm not affected, why should I care? But that's not the case here.
Exactly. And people who are either citizens or have permanent residency status, those are the people that we look for to become rapid responders, because we have a privilege that is given to us by virtue of the citizenship or naturalization or the permanent residence status. So we can stand up, and we are the people who need to stand up on their behalf. Personally, the thing that motivated me to become involved in the core group that started this was I have 3 very dear friends, and they came here across the border. They were teenagers when they came. They're in their 30s now. And just like teenagers, they were initially detained at the border and taken back. And as teenagers will do, they go right through to be able to find a better life. They were you know, kind of being forced into drug gangs, and they didn't want a part of that life. Why would we even send them back to that? And for me, what drove me is that I love these guys. they're in my heart. One of them I call Mijo, which is my son, which is the son I wish I'd had. I can't imagine my life without him. And that's the kind of thing. Reach out to your friends and your neighbors, or take a look into the DACA program. See who these students are. These are people. These are kids. The adults, they're all living here and they're helping us and they're making America stronger.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Just on a logistical level, you know, for people who might see the story and say, how do I get involved? What does it entail? Can you describe, you know, what the training is that's going on here today?
The training is really, there's going to be some role playing at the end, which is kind of fun and it brings the whole thing to life. But we go over pretty much what happens if we get a call on the hotline, and we set up a hotline for the county. A call goes out and we have enough responders that we can reach from Castroville down to King City. And we have small teams of between 5 to 7 people that are trained to go out, and then they begin documenting at the scene. If for some reason, and this actually does happen a lot, because ICE has changed its tactics, we don't always get there in time. But what the importance and the value of the hotline is for people to call in, because then we're able to then get on it. We help find where the detainee has been taken. Right now they're mostly being taken to Richmond, but for a while it was Yuba City, it was down near Arizona. But to be able to get a lawyer assigned to it and to be able to provide support to the family that's been left behind, whether it's emotional, helping to find people who can help supplement rent because if the primary breadwinner is taken, what happens to that parent and the children that are left behind? And that also happens a lot. What happens if a person is taken from a carpool location? Their car stays there, it gets towed, the family now has lost the breadwinner and they lost their transportation. So those are the ways in which citizens and permanent residents can get involved and help. If you don't want to go out and be on the front line during a detention, we have a lot of different ways to put people to work who can help.
And you mentioned situations where people, you know, you mentioned children not knowing whether their parents are going to come home, you know, getting swept up with things unresolved, you know,
Exactly.
not having had a chance to go home and you know, take care of everything. And so this documentation, I would imagine, keeps a record of what has happened so that the family has an answer, and as you mentioned, the next steps, you know, where do they go from there? I mean, right. You know, I think you were mentioning earlier before we had the audio issue, you know, the constitutionality of it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Anyone who is a resident on U.S. soil, regardless of their status, whether they are undocumented or a citizen, we all have the same rights under the Constitution. And these are specifically protected by the 4th and 5th amendments of the Constitution that are related to immigration. And what we do is to try to help the people who are here, who are undocumented, to understand what their rights are, because unfortunately a lot of times ICE is not playing by the rules. We would really love for them to play by the rules, but they trick people, or they pose, we've had them pose as police officers, or they show up in plain clothes. Just this last week in Salinas, there was a house of about, I think there were 7 roommates, no, maybe 9, because 2 were not taken. They were actually tricked into coming out of the house because it was reported, they told them that it wasn't about anything other than there was maybe a violation of the truck that they had outside, so please come look at it. When they came outside, they were taken. And they have rights to not speak, to the right to an attorney. The only thing that's different is if they need an attorney, they need to pay for an attorney. And one of the things we do with the Red Card is to provide a list of attorneys and organizations that make services available for low cost or no cost. One of the other things that we've done, as we've grown stronger, we sort of started just with the hotline, and then the rights, the Know Your Rights, and then we moved on to rapid response to flesh out a responding force. And now we have enough people volunteering that we're able to focus on child safety. And so if a parent is taken, they need to have certain forms signed that if the father's gone or the mother's gone and nobody's there to pick up the child in school, there's a risk of going to Child Protective Services. Now these are U.S. citizens generally. So what we want to do is to be able to provide low-cost or no-cost resources so that families can come in privacy to be able to fill out forms and decide. And it's really awful if you're sitting there trying to decide, what do I do with my children? That's something that most people don't really want to deal with. And so we're working through churches and schools to be able to do that in a safe setting. And people have things set up so that who has a spare key to your car? Who has a spare key to the house? Who has, does somebody else have signing rights on your finances? So that if there are funds there but the family can't access them, then what good are they? So that's the next phase of what we're doing. And so we are looking for funding, and we fund a lot of this ourselves. It's the next phase of the really important work that needs to be done.
Wow. Do you know off the top of your head an estimation of how many cases or families you've helped so far?
Now that's hard. Adriana is speaking right now, so she would have those figures. So no, but I would estimate it at least a couple hundred specifically. I think probably greater than that. And again, a lot of it is that people, like as I had said earlier, and I don't know if that got caught, but if you have 6 to 8 people who called in and reported this and were taken in through the hotline, you probably had 100 people being taken who were really never reported. So it's a challenge, and one of the best things that we can do is to get the hotline number more widely recognized. But with that, and we are all volunteer, so you also start to get crank calls. And people are just living their lives and they pick this up, and you have somebody who doesn't particularly like what we're doing. So we've had to really have a balance of that. But with the increase in the spike and what's happening, we need the hotline out there, regardless of how inconvenient it might be to us.
That's unfortunate to hear that's happening. How many volunteers do you have, roughly?
Several hundred, which is great, but we need more. When you talk about a county as large as ours, that doesn't go very far at all. And they're all working in different aspects. And so we have right around 120 just in the Rapid Response Network alone, but then we also have people working on child safety, and there is a really thriving coalition that's just starting to get together, that's bringing together the religious communities. And they've started meeting on a regular basis. We work regularly with the trade unions. We have virtually every union involved in the work, and so the network is actually stronger than that, because we send a message and then that goes out to the unions, it goes out to people who may not, because of their status, be part of it, but they have a larger wireless network, cell network, and that goes out there too. So our reach is pretty strong.
That's great. Anything that you'd like to share in regards to, this is a controversial issue. It gets people really riled up and on both sides, and it must be difficult to do this kind of work in that kind of climate. Any misconceptions or preconceived notions that you've heard from people who don't agree with what you're doing, that you would hope that they would understand?
I think the best thing I could do is to go back to a personal example. And my grandfather was brought here by my great uncle, who by circumstance and good fortune was an ambassador to the U.S. This was important because he was Armenian, and it was at the time of the genocidal period in Turkey. So he was able to get out along with a couple of other cousins, and they made a life here. So essentially they didn't apply for any kind of, they were just able to be brought over because of the familial relationship. They started a printing company in Philadelphia. It grew from there. We have a large, thriving, extended family. And what if my grandfather hadn't been let in? They would have perished. And a lot of people face these really real circumstances. And I would appeal to people who would disagree with me to that compassion. Look back in your own family roots. Go into Ancestry. I am sure you have somebody there who came over without some kind of papers. Take a look at that and imagine what that would have done to your family and your life. People who are here just want a better life. They're coming here because they're seeking something better, usually because, as my friend's circumstance, they were going to be pulled into drug gangs. How much would somebody who opposes my view have liked it if we had more people on the side of drug gangs? I just think that we, as I said before, can do better and should do better.